International Media TV, television that listens to you.
Hi, I'm Johnnie Burrell. Welcome to the program.
Well, I want to thank everyone for their enthusiasm and active participation. I'm going to sound like a professor now. However, that's what I am. No. I'm Dr. Robert Keith Collins, and I get to be your MC for today. And I must say that it is extremely an honor to welcome you all here, and particularly on the theme of making people uncomfortable. You are now welcomed into this space that is used for multiple purposes. Today, it's used to honor our student leaders. Usually every Tuesday at 4 o'clock or before 4 o'clock from 2 to 4, this is a space where the Academic Senate holds plenary. And as your representative from San Francisco State to the statewide Academic Senate, I'm actually statewide Senate Secretary, it is truly a privilege to have you here and to get you really to think about how many different ways in which people can be made to be uncomfortable, whether it is through policy or, as our exemplars today will show, education. Being here also allows us to celebrate the insight and foresight of the past pioneers. And there are many people today that are actually wearing, and I said I was going to put it in my pocket for convenience sake and actually make it easy. They are wearing a multicolored fist. And this fist actually symbolizes those who pioneered the college that we have the privilege as faculty to teach in. It is also those who wear this insignia that actually pioneered in many respects the type of enthusiasm for seeing change that most of the faculty here embody and that which we convey to our students. 47 years ago, those who pioneered these thoughts, ideas, and actions comprised the Black Student Union, the Third World Liberation Front, San Francisco State faculty, progressives, and community activists. We oftentimes talk about them being only of color. However, they were of all colors, and they created something on the other side of making people uncomfortable, something called community, which at the root is common unity. We oftentimes talk about community in terms of what we look like, those who we happen to be very much like, but seldom those who are different from us, that actually share the same principles that we do, the values that we do, and oftentimes will enable us to convey the ideas that we need in order to see change to fruition. It is because of their courage and their convictions that we can gather to recognize the students, whom many of the faculty in this audience have helped to produce, who are not only from First Nations and from African American communities and Asian American communities and Latino communities, but also Arab and Islamic communities, as well as that wonderful census category called other that actually makes up a lot of different people that we don't necessarily in the United States have the vocabulary yet to identify and ensure that our identification practices of them are consistent with how they answer the question, who am I? However, these young men and women represent the past, the present, and the future of our communities. And it's because of this that I would like you to really think about something very important. When we talk of the strikers and those who are at the forefront of making this change, is it not true that that strike continues? It may not be in the same way that the forefathers and foremothers did, but the ideas of change, of relevant education, equity, life of the mind, and most importantly, that which characterizes their actions, resilience, can still be seen in these students. It's in this brief narrative that I gave a shameless plug to Dr. Wong's strategic plan. However, I think in all strategic plans lies something important, a truth that only individuals can understand, depending upon how they answer the questions, who am I? What are my experiences? And so therefore, it is indeed an honor for me to ask all of the strikers to please stand. Those of you wearing this insignia, and maybe those of you who did not get them, to please stand at this moment and be recognized. Thank you. It is because of you that our work here was actually enabled. And at this time, I'd like to contrast them. And it's not really a contrast. It's actually to show continuance of the student exemplars who actually were able to make it, that we're going to show in a media piece, but hopefully I would like to get you all in person. Please stand if you are here. As my father would say, c'est la vie. So to capture the essence of this moment, I'd like to also encourage all of us to be still for a moment. In my language, which basically means today is a very, very good day. It's a day in which we get a chance to see two things: what happened in the past to be wedded with the future, but also most importantly, I think as many of you got from the conversation, what type of strategies can we employ to ensure that we leave behind something to future generations? And to capture this moment, I'd like to ask the bartenders to please stop serving alcohol. I'd like to ask all of those of you who have alcoholic glasses to lower them. And I'd like to turn this over to our drummers for a wonderful honor song. We are on Alone Land, a group of people who were missionized. And Mission Dolores is the evidence of that missionization. However, oftentimes those individuals are not able to tell their story. And so it is through the drum that we have today that story not only continues, but it also unites all First Nations people from around the country as embodied by the drummers. We mentioned before the discussion about making people a little uncomfortable. One of the great things about the Academic Senate is that this year, I'll say in tandem with a wonderful strategic plan, we were actually able statewide to write a resolution in support of moving ethnic studies forward, and particularly to support the report that came from one of the first, if not the first, task force that studied the state of ethnic studies system-wide in all 23 campuses. Inside of this study actually was not only qualitative information that showed what it was actually like to teach and take classes inside of ethnic studies and the various different departments that make up ethnic studies on campuses, but also something very important. When, where, and in what contexts were these fields that are now over 40 years old supported, and when, where, and in what context they weren't? What it revealed was that a lot of our students are very enthusiastic in learning about what happened to different communities, and not necessarily putting a color on the face of those communities, but the different experiences that they have compared to one's own. And in this report also was something quite exciting. What is required to move ethnic studies into the 21st century and expand it so that these experiences become representative of the diverse lived realities that people embody? It is also here within these walls that the Academic Senate of San Francisco State University actually passed a supportive resolution for ethnic studies as well. So while we are sitting here waiting for the technical problems to be resolved, one of the things you should remember is that this is not just a one-sided space, meaning just for enjoyment of today. This is where a lot of the hard work and sweat, the arguments, the compromises, in some cases, battles that actually are needed in order to ensure that ethnic studies is relevant in the 21st century here at San Francisco State University. And with that, I'd like to recognize someone who didn't get a whole lot of credit, but she served us recently as our secretary and is still a very active member of the San Francisco State University Academic Senate, and that is Professor Bridget Davila. And I will cut my recognition short, as I've been informed our technical difficulties are no more. So please, we'll continue.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Jimenez. I am a psych major and dual minor at San Francisco State University. I am currently a senior and I was awarded the Costco Scholarship Fund. I am very proud of the fact that despite being a first-generation student and being raised in a single-parent household, that I made the decision to pursue a higher education and a dual minor. Prior to coming to Ghana, I was facilitating an anti-human trafficking internship with the YWCA of Berkeley and Oakland, and I was also working in the nonprofit sector at Larkin Street Youth Services, and prior to that, I was working in San Jose at Envision Shelter Network, Julian Struden. I'm currently in Ghana, studying abroad at the University of Ghana, Legon. My program is technically 10 months, but I made the decision to stay in Ghana for a year. The main reason I chose Ghana as my study abroad program is because of how prevalent human trafficking is in the country. I knew that if I was going to study abroad, I wanted to study at a country where I would be able to work with a target population that I want to work with for my career. And that population are survivors of human trafficking, sexual violence, domestic violence, and refugees. Prior to coming to Ghana, I told myself that I would take this time to figure out what I wanted to do post-graduation. I'm currently still undecided, but I do know that I want to live and work internationally. So the 2 months that I will stay in Ghana after my academic program is done, I'm going to take that time and just volunteer. One of my main goals is to volunteer in the Volta region, which is known for child prostitution, forced labor, in the fishing industry, and because that's where they found oil.
And I won the Annetta Gertie Jolivet Empowerment Scholarship. When I started graduate school, I worked as a teacher assistant at Alice Wong U Elementary School. And I also spent this past summer working as a health and wellness coordinator in the Sunnydale community, teaching urban gardening courses. I think public education and access to public education is really important. I've had really great opportunities in the public education system, all the way from kindergarten to now. And I think it's important because not only for our country, not only for economic development of this country, but also because it allows us to learn more about ourselves and our community, and it allows us to question more and to question what's happening. Courses in ethnic studies have helped me to understand the context of people of color in this country, as well as the context of whiteness. And it's also helped me to understand my own multiracial identity, and it's helped to empower me through understanding the historical context of these identities and how they come into play with each other. My future aspirations are to work in a food justice, social justice organization, or a cultural conservatory organization, as well as to apply to a PhD program sometime in the near future.
So one of the greatest accomplishments that I actually really like to share is that I've been on the Dean's List for 4 consecutive semesters. That's a really big deal to me because all my life that I've grown up, like in high school or in college, getting good grades wasn't something I can do. And so coming here and being able to do that, like I really want to tell everyone about that. Another accomplishment was because of my opportunity to be in the Asian American Studies program at San Francisco State, I was able to work with a few nonprofit organizations. This was my first time actually really getting into the community. I worked with Cameron House located in Chinatown of San Francisco as an internship for 1 semester, and then after that they took me on as to work with their summer program. And then even now, like I keep in contact with them, and I worked with their youth program on Friday nights. So that was really exciting for me. In my opinion, I think public education is really important because there's a lot of really smart people, but because of their financial obligations, they can't get to where they want to be because of that barrier. For myself, I really wanted to go to a 4-year university, but because of my parents' financial obligations while I was growing up, that wasn't an option for me. So I went to another 4-year, it was like a state college, but in my hometown. It wasn't exactly where I wanted to go, so I didn't do very well. I waited until I was a little older and I could go on my own, and then I moved up here, and so far it's been a really good thing. And I think that for other students, they face the same obstacle as me, and if they don't get the opportunity to go out, they might just settle for what they get because of not being able to access public education. Well, most definitely, because I'm an Asian American Studies major, and so all the classes I've taken, it actually really impacts like my life as an Asian American woman. There are things that I faced growing up that I wasn't able to comprehend, but because of the courses that I've taken, I was able to really connect the dots and understand why they happened the way they did. For example, my Asian American Studies, I think it was 681 with Dr. Pito. That was actually, it had a lot to do with like community and really understanding how your community was and just things that goes on around it. And it was like things I already knew, but I was able to put into a bigger perspective after taking that course.
Well, thank you for your attention. As you can see, our students, and one I actually have to say is still in my class, are extremely dynamic in what they are studying and doing, but oftentimes they get caught up in something. Should I do this or that? And Ms. Leopardo knows that I will say do both. Why? Because it will ensure that you will succeed at one, and should you fail at the other one, you can go, oh well, or you will succeed at both and be wonderful. It is at this time that I'd like to continue on this notion of doing both. I mentioned a shameless plug, and actually it's not a shameless plug. It is an actual honor to talk about 3 things: equity, life of the mind, and resilience. And it's because of our president, our 13th president of San Francisco State University, that actually in the College of Ethnic Studies we're still able to do this. And because of that effort, what you see, actually I can't speak about. It can only be talked about. Like Epictetus, whose student was the great Emperor Marcus Aurelius, only our students can tell that story. And it will be them in the future that will continue to tell this story. And to actually get at the heart of my introduction, I'd like to introduce you to our 13th president, Dr. Les Wong. And what I hope he will bring you is not only words of encouragement, but also give you a sense of why what these students say actually speaks louder than our pedagogy.
Thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you, Dr. Collins.
You have a funny side to yourself. This is good. He's the most serious scholar on campus, or one of them. That's terrific. Thank you. It's an honor. This is my fourth year and my fourth attendance at the celebration of the College of Ethnic Studies. And every time I always have memories of being a young kid in East Oakland, and I've shared a lot of those. So I'm going to try and break tradition and not go back so many years and share another memory. I do want to honor Danny Glover. He's made me think about something, and I really dislike the term disruptor. I think it's panderous to the business community and to an exceptionally greedy community that believes that by disrupting you can make a lot of money, and that's supposed to make you a great person. So I think of disruptors as people who make me think and challenge me to think harder about things and more difficult things. And Mr. Glover has been doing some things in his life that I want to give him a lot of credit for, because spending some time with him yesterday and then today, we've made a promise to each other to continue to get together. I hope many of you were doing this, but when you listen to Mr. Glover, I felt really good, because I was ticking off that I have read about 8 of every 10 books that he referred to. And I probably need to read a couple of them again to refresh my own thinking. And he made me think of parents and mentors, etc., that when I wanted to know more about individual rights, and particularly more about the civil rights movement, priests would turn to me. They were radical. They had spent time in jail, and that's probably influenced my thinking. But they said, read the core stuff. And I spent my freshman and sophomore year in college reading all of W.E.B. Du Bois's work, all of it, because I wanted to know about Malcolm X. And they said, you better read the stuff that Malcolm X read, and about the experiences, etc. And it turned me on to reading and just reading. And I think I want to credit Mr. Glover for really getting at the notion that the roots of activism really is good, persistent, value-driven thinking. And good, persistent, valuable thinking comes about from reading dangerous stuff. And that's why reading skills might be the most critical root of activism in our culture. Okay? So I want to thank him, and then I'll move on to some other things. I'll be really quick. They only gave me 10, 15 minutes. The professor referred to a lot of different things going on campus. I hope everyone realizes that the demographers are talking about an America that's going to be really different in 2025. And I have to tell you that I want to challenge the students in the room to look up those predictions about a multi-ethnic, multiracial America in 2025. And then I want you to pull out the statistics, the demographics of San Francisco State in 2016. We are there. And all of our students represent pioneers in dealing with the complexities of a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious world that is incredibly complex. And that I do believe that as we move forward or work to move the core of this country forward in good ways, that our students will have the experience of working in the very country that they will build and have an effect on in 2025. And so I want to thank the professors, our faculty, our staff, the community that is here today. This is the cauldron of the ideas of the future. And I think those ideas will spur us to better action. So, okay, as a president, campus stuff. My brag points, number one, the number of top programs and faculty and staff who are committed to social justice, equity, and fairness, and we're pulling them in from across the country. We are undergoing about 58 tenure-track hires this year. We did 30-plus last year and 30-plus my first year. And I tell you that the activism on this campus is just in good hands. The faculty that are coming in, their scholarship, their commitment to our motives are terrific. Our enrollment, I need space. We need space. I am still deadly committed. I just left a PUC meeting on Friday about a commitment by the PUC and the City of San Francisco to, in addition to our commitment in Hunters Point, they are asking us to develop programs to be at 1550 Evans in the Bayview. And so, again, that really is our soul. That will be a test of our commitment, and we look forward to it. The metric that I will share with you, because it will challenge the deans and certainly my staff. We are averaging over 52,000 applications every year for about 6,000 spots. It's just staggering to imagine that. We've been asked by the governor and the chancellor to grow another 2%. We easily will be close to 33,000 to 35,000 students probably by next holiday season 2016. And so we're going to be selective because we're just not going to take anybody. And I think they have to be committed to our mission and to our commitment to this community. And I'm really excited by that. The role of College of Ethnic Studies, I can't imagine a more important role as we serve this city and our students. And I will tell you that I am looking to them for their leadership, for their mentoring of me. They've been terribly good at saying, Les, think about that. They often say, don't step in that now. You've got to think this through. And they have been good about keeping me on my toes. And so I want to give a shout out to the faculty and students of the College of Ethnic Studies. There are two things I want to tell you that represent deep core values. And my team has been saying we've got to talk about this, but I have told students that I'd rather be remembered than heard. And we've been doing two things that I wanted to share with you because it represents a value system at this campus that resonates so deeply with me. My assistant here, Alicia Claudio, raise your hand. She's been part of this dynamic. As you know, there has been a lot of talk about post-incarceration programs, helping the young people and those that are currently incarcerated to rethink a model that has failed miserably. And the whole sort of quick incarceration, 3 strikes, you're out, you're gone, etc. Just probably the most miserable failure of our society in the modern era. The chancellor, I'm proud to say, asked San Francisco State to lead a 12-campus project to expand our Project Rebound statewide. For those of you that don't know, it is an award-winning program on campus that has been probably, at least in the 20-plus years now, where we have been working with post-incarcerated individuals who want to go to college and to finish. It is a stellar record. We have been asked to find a way to expand that to 12 other campuses. We will be working with, for example, San Quentin, all of the the sort of incarcerated, but the emphasis in this first round will be to develop 12 more Project Rebounds on 12 other CSU campuses. And the team in the development office were hot to fund this and get it going as early as this coming fall. Chancellor White deserves a lot of credit. Not only did he volunteer me to do that, one of the conditions was that he also put money on the table to develop a number of proposals. And so it is very right in our sweet spot, again, to make sure that this university will lead in making sure that young people are more likely to go to college and graduate than to go to prison. And I think that is within our grasp to do very dramatically. On the whole other side of justice, I want to tell you something that my team did that we're very quiet about, but we're heading into the second round. I made a decision with my team last July that it's hard for us to talk about social justice and commitment if we have full-time employees making less than $15 an hour. And so I made a categorical decision that upset a lot of people in the office down in Long Beach. We made it happen, but I can tell you that as of a month ago, there is not a single employee full-time making less than $15 an hour. I am really proud that over 90 custodial and maintenance folks received more money in their paycheck last month, and continuing forward, I am incredibly proud of such a small decision to align our values with what matters in the lives of our employees. I am empowering a committee on campus this next semester, and we will tackle the very difficult issue, $15 minimum wage for students and part-time employees. And that is very complicated. Let me give you an idea of why. A lot of financial aid is based upon income. And if your income goes up, your financial aid starts moving downward. And so we've got to do a pretty good analysis of the cost benefits, being able to pay our students $15 an hour without jeopardizing their financial aid or other assistance. And that is going to take people much smarter than me to tackle a pretty difficult problem, but I can't think of a better campus and a better group of people to solve that problem. And I hope to do that in the near future. And so I just can't tell you how proud I am of the College of Ethnic Studies. Dean Montero has switched my brain on that every time I talk publicly, I talk about San Francisco State having the only College of Ethnic Studies in the country. And I want to thank him because I now start talking about how dynamic the College of Ethnic Studies will be in the year 2030, when we really are a trademark brand name throughout the known world. So I'm going to stop, and I want to share with you something because there have been so many complicated things going on in this country and around the world, as Mr. Glover was pointing to. And I've been trying to understand a lot of that. And so my own reading has been touching upon dangerous things. And I'm trying to understand this Tea Party thing. I'm trying to understand the candidates on the GOP side. I'm trying to understand the violence on campuses. I hope it's not going to come true. But 2015, there were over 80 gun incidents where injuries or death have occurred on college campuses in America. Unheard of in the history of American education. In talking with some folks in Washington, D.C., particularly on the law enforcement side, they were very afraid that the very sad goal of perhaps even having 100 college student deaths from gunfire might very well occur this academic year. And that we need to come to grips with in very real ways. And so I want to share with you a phrase, because I don't know the answers. I've been studying, listening, interacting with all kinds of people. But I came across it in a recent reading in the New Yorker, because it does seem like democracy in this country is coming apart. But then I remind myself that when I was 18 years old, it was 1967. And they thought the world was coming apart then too. But I have to tell you, there's a big difference. And I hope our veterans from 1968 might agree with me. I remember vividly as a young man that we were driven by values that we wanted to make the world better. And we were willing to get arrested, to be beaten, to be ostracized, to be ignored by campuses and college authorities, but we were driven by the belief that we could make a difference. And I just don't see that in a lot of the motives today. And so I want to share with you in closing something that I've been thinking about a lot. And it's just a quote from a guy named George Packer. Democratic institutions no longer feel legitimate when they continue to produce blatantly unfair outcomes. Think about that. Democratic institutions no longer feel legitimate when they continue to produce blatantly unfair outcomes. I hope it causes some thinking on your part about institutions that need to change. Thank you.
Thank you, President Wong, and those are definitely words to ponder. It's at this time that you all heard those uka champuli singers, right? And they have a tendency to sing like Dr. Wong appreciates in the northern style. But my folks are what we call racial Southern. They really are Southern. And for those of you from New Orleans, you know what I'm talking about. And so we sing low. And it's on this note that I got a text message about 8 o'clock this morning from an individual telling me that today is Dean Montero's birthday. So I don't know how many of you sing, but anyone interested in singing happy birthday? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. I'm gonna die. Montero, happy birthday to you.
Silent auction is closed.
Yes, I mean everything. Okay, so the silent auction is closing. So those of you who want to make a bid like I did last year at the end where I outbid Dr. Wong because I saved up a long time, please feel free to do so. But I probably will need to go get a passport because I just embarrassed my dean tremendously. So, however, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Dean of the College of Ethnic Studies, Dr. Ken Montero.
Okay. You can see how much in control deans are. But the nice thing about that is it makes this role much more fun. I mean, basically, I've had the privilege of being the Dean of the College of Ethnic Studies for almost a decade. And what you get a sense of is not just the college and the students at this moment in time, but the movement that we're a part of, that basically when you're asked to step into a role that they give you a title for and a business card for, and they call it leadership, it means that you're there to feed, nurture, and hold on tight, because there's so many great ideas, including people who get into your information and find out that you're a year past the 6-0. But this is a point where, and I know you've been here for a while and you've been well-fed intellectually, I'm going to ask you really now to allow me to do that 3-hour dissertation that I promised you. And I'm sure if I do, you'll do exactly what the College of Ethnic Studies should do, is that you'll train me to do something else. A few more thank yous. I do need to just give a couple more examples of what our students and faculty are doing. And then I need to invite you into a future-oriented commitment. And those are the 3 things I'd like to do. There are a couple people, and if I did, I may not have heard, but there were, we must always acknowledge founders and strikers. And those of you, if you did not get the marker, we recognize you because of your walking brilliance. And so I'm sure everyone knew that you were one of the founders, but I want to make sure that they get the commemorative pins that are for them, that are specifically for them. And they're the multicolored pins that are determined based on a retro look at the fist, multicolored, just like this abstract symbol up here, with the colors of the strike to show the cross-ethnic solidarity that went into it. And in that, you'll also see that the modern pieces, the Mobius strips, if you play with kids, they're really great. You twist them into like a figure 8 or an infinity line. The reason for that is if you run your finger on it, it's the one structure that you don't have to take your finger off, and you can roll around it infinitely. It's to sort of give you this image of the infinite connectivity of community that we have ideally. One of them's broken. That's our finishing work. So the logo that you're looking at in the abstract is an echo of the logo of the demand that was made in the 68-69 strike. The demand on the universe, not just on who was around here, the demand on the universe was we will have a just and complete and whole family community. So I did see a few folks in here. I know that Vice President Nava couldn't make it, but I did see his Associate Vice President, Ann Harris, and I wanted to mention that she was here because a significant amount of the staffing that comes in to help us, the College of Ethnic Studies, comes from advancement and development. That's important. I saw a lot of our staffing in college, some of you, the faculty and staff from the college, and those of us who are deputized like Sue and Max. I saw you doing many, many things that I didn't have to do. Some of them I didn't even know how to do, so I'm very appreciative of them. Kimberly Brandon, San Francisco Port Commissioner, I saw you come in, and you're also on our foundation board. Sabrina Hernandez, Vice President Board of the Golden Gate Highway and Transit District, was here. Bridget Davila is not only one of our faculty members, but she's on the Board of Trustees for San Francisco City College, which is basically a connected educational body for us in terms of what we do. Shakil Ali, Board President for Jefferson Elementary School District. 2 chairs of ethnic studies. I'm not sure, I'm still sure I think she's still around here. Chair Boatamo Masupio, who's the chair of the Ethnic Studies Department at Sacramento State, was here. And I also saw another chair that I have a fond memories of, is Dr. Fred Gaines, who's an alumnus of this campus and whose master's thesis I was called on. This was when I was not in the College of Ethnic Studies, but he was getting his master's in Ethnic Studies, and I was asked to pitch in then for one of my predecessors, Dean D. Philip McGee, and I found that to be an impish change of history. D. Philip McGee at that point in time had passed. Not a morbid thing for those of us who knew him. He lived, and he lived straight into eternity with the verve that a San Francisco State person should. And so taking on that master's thesis, I didn't know he was actually dusting off a chair for me. Our scholarship students, you've seen their stories. I won't walk through a lot of them. Our scholarship students are the ones that we've had the opportunity to give financial support to and to be helpful to, but they actually are exemplars of the students that you're seeing walking around here, each with a story of how they got here, and each with a story they're building about how they are going to change the world, because they are the children of the movement. They are. Even the ones that show up not knowing it. Because I showed up at college not thinking my academics were going to have anything to do with the movement. I didn't get into the academy to change the world. I liked reading because it was a way of escaping the work that was being done. So what happened was, after I wasn't in college in '68, so what we did was we took over our high school. But when my nerves needed to, I curled up with a book. I wasn't reading Hughes as a part of a movement in the early 1900s. I was reading Langston Hughes for the beautiful poetry that would soothe my soul. That's why I read him. I enjoyed classes as a hobby because for me they were an easy thing to do for whatever reason, and I'm thankful. But it was hard for me during what I considered to be, and many of my friends considered to be, an unjust war. And I didn't get that from the peace movement because I hadn't met the peace movement in my little town. I met veterans coming back from that war that were questioning why we were going there. The other sorts of injustices we were talking about, they came as the work we needed to do, and school was actually the place I went to rest. But the universe has a sense of humor. And so more of my teaching had to, you know what happened. More of your teaching ends up saying, no, I've got to be part of the folks who say those things I was reading outside of class, they shouldn't have given me a PhD because they're inside of class. Those books I wasn't supposed to be reading, they're here. And as I continue to meet people who were part of creating that movement, it became more natural for me to understand there was a reason for my academics besides just being an oasis, and it comes together. So in that way, a couple of observations. 47 years ago, on November 6th, the 1968, the Black Student Union Third World Liberation Front movement began the longest student-led strike. I'm not going to walk you through that. You should have taken notes. There is a test. 40 years later, so I'm obviously not talking about today, 40 years later, almost to the day, November 4th, 2008, the United States elected its first self and other identified African-American president. Those who took black studies, Africana studies, you know that there were a few others in the woodshed. Anyway, but this is the one that he claimed and we claimed, and it was not a perfect moment at either of those times, but it's a movement. It's a movement going forward. We're a living part of that movement. So, a couple of plugs for the college. President Wong, thank you for the support. It makes a big difference. But I need to give you a couple of things that we are doing along with the wonderful music that comes from people like John Carlos Perea, who puts together the trio and actually hosts a ceremonial drum that's part of this college that has 3 generations of Perea sitting at it. A former dean, an assistant professor, and a young angel who will come here, and she may be the university president. But besides those sorts of things, I'm only going to give you a couple. The college has added a number of majors and minor programs since its start. But this past year was the one in Arab, Muslim ethnicities, and diaspora. Unique in the nation, maybe the world. And unique to us in a particular way because it's not just about adding the colorations and names that we give ourselves to the college, because that's not what it was about. It's the only one that was charged, and we hired the right person to do it, Professor Rabab Abdul-Hadi, to anchor it in the question of what are the struggles of the peoples who describe themselves as Arab or Muslim in the diasporic world, and how do those struggles work to their liberation in the United States and around the world. So we could have, to quote a phrase from one of my colleagues in Long Beach, it wasn't that the universities weren't doing race and ethnicity in the 60s. They were doing it on us. They were doing it on us. The radical notion was, we will tell you who we are, we'll tell you what we do, and we'll tell you what our struggles are producing for the advancement of the world. And that was the anchor there. We also rolled out a very practical thing, a dual major, with its constraints. People are telling folks, you're going to graduate faster, with less, you can't do this, you can't do that. What did Professor Collins say? Our faculty sat down with some other faculty around the university and said, we're interdisciplinary. We play well in the sandbox, and we can wrap our degrees around any degree in the university, such that with those 120 units that you've got, you can leave here with 2 degrees, whether it's 2 degrees from our college in the arts, the social sciences, the professional schools, pretty much any other degree for those 120 units, without missing a single learning objective in your graduation. Just leave it that the faculty did magic. But like good magic, it was done very, very methodically. But let's just say it did it magically. And the third thing I wanted to mention was, and this was, we also set up a historic relationship with the University of Colorado's Comparative Ethnic Studies program. We now have a relationship such that we have a preferred admittance from our students in our master's program to their PhD program. And at least one of them will get a stipend of $3,000 to go with it. Powerful, more powerful. It partly was helped because the chair of that department is one of our alums. The connections are made. The students, we're educating 6,000 a semester. 6,000 a semester. That's larger than several of the small liberal arts colleges in this area, and larger than at least one CSU. That's a homework assignment. 2, our students, based on some data that we now have from the Institutional Research Office, graduate sooner and at a higher rate than the students on average in the university. And that dual major thing that you might be worried about because of what you hear about what students can do, dual majors tend to graduate earlier and more successfully than single majors. So our students are actually doing it, and this college and the movement that created it engaged the university in something that at the time was called anti-intellectual, when in fact we know it's where intelligence starts. The immersing our knowledge in service to the community, for the enrichment of our communities. Well, San Francisco State now can boast that it, as an institution, does more of that than most, and that's also, again, a part of our critical strategic plan. But the college students in our college are still leading proportionately in doing that. So I just want you to know that our students and our faculty are still active, still doing so. I'm going to stop there on the commercial because you've got things in your book, the commemorative book that you're going to get. You've got the stories on the wall of the students. You've got the stories walking around here with the alumni and with the students that are sitting in front of you. But I want to give a couple of special thank yous. There was a hint. The second bottle of wine wasn't supposed to come out right now, but I did want, as the holidays were coming up, President and Mrs. Wong, I wanted a small gift. I wanted to be something that you could take home to your dinner table. But I know that you're out here for us all the time, so I knew that it should be modest and indicate that we know that the two of you are always here with us. I've got some boxes a couple of boxes, and a little case with some boxes, but I'll give you some setup for this. When we give out these gifts and these tokens, because everyone, not only in this room is very important, but a lot of folks who don't come here, as a college, we always give them as examples, as exemplars. We don't honor an individual just because of what they think they're fabulous about, and they may very well be. I don't want to, even including presidents. We give it to them And we give these recognitions because they're working in community and connection, and they understand that it was never all about them. It will never all be about them. But in understanding that, both they and we are better for it. The thank you to Mr. Glover. He is always generous to San Francisco, to us as individuals in the university. I've got two individuals I'd like to come up together, if they wouldn't mind. Miss Christine Harris, if she's still here, and Miss Juanita Tamayo-Lott. They are similar powerful women who have been helping the college, but they come from two different clusters. Juanita Tamayo-Lott is also one of our founder strikers. Okay? She went off from here to a very successful career with the Census Bureau, but came back to help us, urge us, and even push when I needed a push, and that was good, to get us involved in a couple of extra projects. I'll only mention one of them, which was connecting our students with statisticians and mathematicians of color doing work in the public, private, and governmental circles, and the place was packed. Now, Christine Harris is not an alum of San Francisco State, but that's okay. No hating on you, because I'm not either. But some of us come here, and some of us stay for over 20 years. Who's counting over 25? Christine Harris came to us into our advancement office. She came to be our advancement rep. That's the development office of the person who helps us. This was a time when we hadn't been doing any of this. I needed someone to connect us both with potential donors, but to start where we needed to start, we hadn't reached out to our alumni. A person who could walk the city, where whenever she walks in, and if you've ever seen her walking the city, you would think she grew up in every single neighborhood in San Francisco, and there'll be people who say, I must have known her in high school. I must have known her. Yeah, I know. Your family used to live on. But that's who she is in terms of the greatness of her heart. So she came in that way, but she did it as a career move that wasn't really a career move. She didn't need to come here for that. She was at a point in her life where she said, I'm making a choice where I want to work with some folks doing things that matter to me. And it wasn't because we were abstract to her. At the University of Indiana, she might have caused a little disturbance or two with her cohort, and so she knew the history here. She knew some of the people here. So when she came, it was in that spirit. They also did something else. They became the college's lead donors. And so I don't want to embarrass you too much about that, because that's not why they did it. That's not how they did it. But somebody needs to say that it was a time when state monies were going away, and we're not trying to replace state monies. I go against the grain. I believe there will be a day that the state will understand that it should fully fund its public education if it thinks it's their universities. However, that's a digression. The positive side of that is to say, I always remember that the state is our first donor, and we need to woo our state donor a little bit better. But I wanted to acknowledge the two of you for the generosity of spirit that also produced, without, I don't even think you necessarily knew it, our lead individual donors to the college, just because they were there and they were giving what they could. They said they were embarrassed, so I got to give it back. It's always about giving back. Ms. Christine Harris, for your long-standing commitment and generosity in supporting the College of Ethnic Studies. We give this to you on November 8th, 2015. Juanita Tamayo-Lott is a founder, friend, and continued inspiration to the college. We give this to you on November 8th, 2015. Again, not the only, but they did it in concert. And yes, there's an ask coming. And you need to understand, as a shy person, which may not be obvious to you, but my family knows that, And two, someone who was taught you don't ask anybody for anything. Oh, please, if I take you, I won't take you out anywhere if you keep doing that. And of course, I was a seventh child, so I actually didn't even need to hear that. I mean, as a seventh child, you already know it. You wonder, why are you repeating this? I've already heard this the first 6. I'm not nearly as dumb as you think. I'm trying to go to college. Treat me like I... Anyway. The invitation I'm asking is, 46 years ago, the movement created a fledgling institution, an institution that must assure its institutional longevity. Now, this grates at some people. The college is not the movement. That sometimes sounds, because you want to say something cute and warm and fuzzy. The college is not the movement. The movement is ongoing. The movement produces products. Those products need to be continuously moved by the movement, but the movement occurs with the people who are seeing the institution as relevant or not relevant. And as we become less relevant, we're told. As we become more relevant, sometimes we're told, but the movement is sort of like parents. Sometimes they don't want you. It's more about the encouragement. It's more about the guidance. So, and the movement is all of the people. But part of the institutionalization, one, the state is still the first donor, but not for some reasons of, oh, gee, the poor College of Ethnic Studies. No, the College of Ethnic Studies is part of the people. The people produce the work, the structure, and give permission to those representatives to use our money to pay for what we find valuable. So I believe our first challenge to the college is we need to be part of the education movement that helps the legislators remember that they are there to represent the interests of the public good, and we are one of the best public goods that they... So the first one is to commit to being part of education is a right. Education is a right philosophically because we know it, because we say it, but because we make it so. The second ask is I want 1,000 people to join me. 1,000. So there's not 1,000 in this room. So that means we're going to go out. For those who can. To commit to the college from here to the 50th anniversary in 4 years, $10 a month. For some of us, that's either one trip to your favorite, and I won't name a company, coffee shop, or other beverage location, or 2 or fewer, because it may not actually get you your beverage of choice. And you may say, $10 a month, you don't set a very high bar. From 1,000, come on, do it with me, 1,000 times 10, times 12 months. If we had that, annually the college would have an additional $120,000 a year to invest in students and faculty community projects. Now, I'm just going to ask for intent in the room right now. And Alex, watch the hands. You'll find out whether the intent got... But I'm just asking for intent. I'm an educator. You do whatever you're going to do after you get there. But I'm just asking for intent. Who can join me in $10 a month? Who can do that? Okay. And you can think about it, because you may not be able, because I'm joking about those of us who can do it. But actually, I also know and have lived it, $10 exactly. That's meals. That's, you got to multiply it. That 10's got to spend for, more than that. So I'm not taking it for granted. That $10 came out of some hard work. The second one is a little bit larger. The goal between now and the 50th is to have 100 friends. So 1,000 sustainers. That's our foundation. That's showing us that we're connected. Folks who don't have the $10 that month may be the one who encourages the person who has the $10. You don't come and give me that. I don't need to go to have that. You send it in there. But $100 a month for those of us who can. My partner of 26 years may not know it, but we're also pledging to be in on the $100 a month. We'll talk. That's Reverend Perry Lang, my partner for 26 years, and we're counting on it being more, so you all have to support me in this. $100. Again, you say, well, but I just heard that Stanford got billions of dollars. Well, that's very nice for them. They're my alma mater, and they got my $10. So they're not going to get what I'm giving here, though. $100 a month, which is 120, excuse me, times 12, excuse me, 100 times 12, $1,200. So you have 100 people, $100 times 12. Even though I said the sentence wrong, you did the math on it. It's an additional 120,000. The only thing I want to know who's going to join me with that. If you can. I'm not saying. Okay, I actually see folks who've raised their hand on that. And one of the purveyors is not sitting in his chair, but he's already joined. That's $240,000. That's a lot of money from 1,000 tens and 100 100s. But that's not the important part about it. Only three things are going to happen with the money that comes in that way. A third, direct student scholarship and support. It's what we do. A third is direct support to student, faculty, community partnership projects, because that's what we do. And a third to an endowed fund. Why? Because we're going to have rough years. With no bank account to back it up in the lean years, building some interest, we're not helping to institutionalize. So it is a financial ask. You think about it. Anybody who can do it today, start doing it out at the table out there. Ken will be out there. Alex will be out there. But more importantly than that, it's not just money. It's time, talent, and treasure. And the treasure is the product of the time and the talent. That's what it is. So I want to go back to thanking every single one of you who's here, because you brought your time, your creativity. There are ways in which some of us may not know what you did, but this is why we get together, to hear those stories and to share those stories. Your talents, the artists, those who are actually doing deep work in the community in terms of organizing and activating and keeping this movement alive. And for those of us who are blessed with a little extra cash that week, that month, that year, they can give it back here. Like I said, I give my couple of dollars to each of my alma maters. They did something for me. I have been here for getting close to half my life. My lion's share's going here. So I thank you. I thank you. Riffing off of President Obama, riffing off of Martin Luther King, who's riffing off actually someone before him. The arc of history, actually the moral arc of history bends towards justice. The riff from the president was, because we bend it, education is a right, because it is morally right, but it will be actualized because we will make it happen. I thank you for coming. I know there's more food. I'm sorry for cutting into the art and that little angel that you have there who motivates me. But I want to thank every single one of you for coming. I want you to continue to eat on your way out, drink on your way out responsibly. This might be the water time or the coffee time. Thank you very much.